And the recorded success meetup sessions are added to both our YouTube channel. We're trying to make sure we start posting those in the Facebook group as well. So if you're part of Inside Real Estate's Facebook discussion group or the YouTube channel, you can usually grab them there. Just for fun, I'll pop these links in the chat. The Facebook discussion group is great, not only for past recordings of our kvCORE success meetups, but additionally, we try to post the upcoming topics for the week in here as well. So let's see what's on the schedule for today. For tomorrow's session, I believe that's with my fellow trainer, Christina. She'll be talking about using merge tags to personalize your mass communications. And then again, today we're talking about adding email contacts to kvCORE. Yesterday, Heather led a session about building a communities dropdown on your kvCORE website with SEO pages. And again, if you're not seeing that recording in our Facebook group or on a YouTube channel just yet, usually Heather has them uploaded within about 48 or so hours. So you can reference it here through our Facebook discussion group, or you can always head over to the YouTube channel. I'll share that link out in the chat as well. In fact, I'll take you directly to the playlist that we have, all for success meetups. We have been teaching these for a while now, so I think there's well over 100 videos in there, so hours of content under our success meetup playlist. So a good one to check out. And of course, if you're looking for something specific, feel free to, use the search bar on YouTube if you want to know more specifically about landing pages or website edits, or how to organize your CRM. We've got lots of topics that have been posted in there. All right, but for today's session, every time I teach a kvCORE success meetup, I always like to give you guys a handy little cheat sheet or a little doc about what we're talking about here today, just something for you guys to reference and refer back to later. So of course, I've made one today for our topic of adding email contacts to kvCORE. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pop my agenda in the chat here, and I'll explain a little bit about what we're talking about here today. So before I became a product trainer for Inside Real Estate, so besides teaching some of these success meetups, I teach a lot of the orientations, how it works, and building your pipeline sessions. If any of you have been to one of those, hi, welcome back. But I have a background before becoming a product trainer of working with our lead configuration team here at kvCORE, which is the team that can help with bringing in contacts to your database. And so have a background with bringing in contacts, and it's one of the things that I love to bring up. I try to revisit this topic at least every 6 months or so, just for any new agents that are joining us that aren't quite familiar with all the options available to them. So last Tuesday, we had a discussion about bulk importing spreadsheets of contacts. Today, I want to talk about some different ways to add your email, your Gmail, or Outlook contacts to kvCORE. And then probably, I think, following week, we'll have a 4th of July special. That's what I'll be doing, I think, next Tuesday. But then in the weeks to come, I'll also have a session on adding in phone contacts and a little bit about syncing third-party leads as well. So doing a little mini series, if you will, about bringing in those contacts. Keep in mind, I only teach 1 day a week, so we also present on different topics. Heather always, I know, goes into something, fun, a little bit more advanced ways to spruce up your website or integrate outside tools. And, occasionally there's topics on things like scripting, different platform add-ons. So lots of goodies if you've already brought in your contacts and maybe this isn't the topic that you're interested in. These success meetups are also open Q&A. So if you have questions about anything in kvCORE, whether it be related to today's topic or something else, feel free to pop those questions in the chat or the Q&A at any time. You can even pop them in now. If I can kind of embed them into what we're talking about now, I'll probably do so. If there's something a little different, I might save the answers to those questions towards the end of today's session. But I do want to make sure, if you have a question, don't be shy. Feel free to ask that in the chat or Q&A, and I'll try to make sure I'm addressing those for you guys. All right. So when it comes to adding email contacts into kvCORE, if you were with us last Tuesday, we talked about bulk importing files of contacts. So I don't want to spend too much of today's session here today talking about that. That is absolutely an option. No matter what your email source is, even if it's not Gmail or Outlook, if you had contacts in, say, Yahoo, or I know there's a lot of other mail servers out there. I'm not sure what people are using still these days. I feel like everybody's got a Gmail or Outlook at this stage. But no matter what your email source is, there's typically a way to export those contacts, download that file to your computer, and just bring all those contacts in mass to kvCORE. And that success meetup that we taught last Tuesday about bulk importing contacts should be up on YouTube now. So if you want to do that method, you're welcome to check that video out. I will say one of the nice benefits of doing that process of exporting all your contacts and just importing them in is you can make sure that you had any notes, other information that you have with those contacts, that all typically exports out as well. Additionally, you can kind of take your time, review that information, double check that all your contact information is correct, label your contacts how you like. If you're not quite familiar, if you're maybe newer to kvCORE and you're not sure how we organize contacts in the CRM, I recommend, checking out some of our training that talks about status, deal type, and hashtags within kvCORE. And I won't talk about that too much here, but in your CRM, all of your contacts are going to get a status, which refers to where they are currently in their home buying or home selling journey. So are they a current client, maybe a long-term prospect, or someone who's actively searching, or an active lead? And then they're all going to have a deal type, which indicates what type of deal you hope to have with them. Are they a buyer, a seller, or a renter? And then you can also have your own personal tags in the system as well. And we just call those hashtags at kvCORE. They can really be any phrase of your choosing. Like, if you want to pinpoint groups like your first-time home buyers, people searching for homes in 3 to 6 months, or who said they were interested in the pool home, that's totally up to you. So definitely an option for bringing in email contacts. If you just want to bring all of the contacts over one time, label them correctly, that's a great method. For anyone who still finds that a little overwhelming, or potentially wants not only, maybe your email contacts to sync over, but maybe would also like the opportunity to view maybe unread emails in kvCORE, or be able to sync over their, say, Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar to kvCORE, that's another option with the sync process for your email contacts. And you can set up an email sync that, just brings over contacts. Every time you add a new one to Gmail, just have it sync over directly into kvCORE. And a little pro tip for any of my Android users out there, for a lot of Android users, I know those Android contacts, in many cases, you just have them automatically back up to whatever Google account you have associated with your phone. And this could be a really handy process if you're adding contacts to your Android left and right, but you have it automatically synced to your Google, and then connect your Google to kvCORE. That's a pretty handy method to just have those contacts flow in. So we'll talk about how to connect a Google contact or Google account to your kvCORE platform. And again, you can use it for contacts, you can use it for your calendar, or for emails. So that is on our agenda today. Let's jump into kvCORE real quick and do a little demo of that. So to find this option, I'm in the Smart CRM here. It doesn't matter where you are in kvCORE. You actually look in the upper right-hand corner. Oh, and it looks like I've already got something attached here. I thought I disconnected that. Uh-oh. So it looks like I'm already attached here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect my Google just so I can officially walk you guys through the process. So I pointed out upper right-hand corner, just to the right of where you'll see like a little blue quick actions button here, which little pro tip, this is always a quick way to add in a manual contact, add in a phone call, add a note for your contacts. A lot of people overlook this drop-down menu. But just to the right of that, you'll see a little envelope symbol. I'm going to click there. And you can see I have the option to connect a Google or Outlook mail account. And yes, unfortunately, you can choose just one at a time. Only one can be synced to your platform. Now, I don't have an Outlook account, so I apologize. I won't be able to demo that here today, but the process is fairly similar. So I'm going to click on Connect a Google Mail account. And hopefully you guys can see the little pop-up box that's showing up on the left-hand side of my screen. It's still loading here. And it's asking me to choose which email address I want to sync on over. Once I go ahead and choose my email address, it's just going to ask for permission for this information to sync over. I do want to let anyone who's kind of hesitant about this process know kvCORE does not download your emails, does not save them. No one else in kvCORE, your admins, your broker can't see your emails if you have them connected to kvCORE. So it's exclusive to your site. If you disconnect this at any point, again, it stops showing in kvCORE. So don't worry, we're not tracking that information if you decide to use this method. But you'll notice my whole page refreshed when I hit allow this process to be connected. But now in the upper right-hand corner with that little envelope symbol, there's a red number 4 to the right of it. It looks like I've got 4 unread emails in my inbox here, 4 new messages. Well, I'm just going to click on Google settings at the bottom, and this is where I can really control what I want to sync over. So when you first connect it, it is going to sync over your contact emails and any unread emails. Now, if you don't want to use it for that purpose, just click the toggle to turn it off. And a cool piece of clarification I want to provide to this here. Unread emails, you notice as I clicked on that little icon there, it just gave me kind of the title and a little blurb about what those unread emails are. So it just kind of lets you know if you have unread emails. You'll still probably have to log into Google to access those. But what it really does that's really cool with your contact emails is if you have a contact that you sent an email through Google or sent an email through Outlook, you've got that contact in kvCORE, what the sync process does is it loads those emails into your contact's timeline. So you can flip through their timeline, and even if you sent them an email through again, your outside email source instead of kvCORE, you can see that in their timeline. So helps you, if you're someone who's still getting in the habit of sending out emails through kvCORE, or maybe a client responded to you through your Gmail or Outlook instead of kvCORE, it's just a handy resource that shows up in their timeline. All right. Now, if I'm not using this for email, other options as well, I'm going to make sure to toggle on this option to sync my Google Calendar with kvCORE. That's going to be visible on your dashboard. So I'll show you what that looks like in a minute and give you some more details on that. And then I also have the option to sync over contacts. Now, if I turn on this button, what's going to happen is it's going to sync over any contacts I have in my Google Contacts to kvCORE. And it's for the initial process, when you first set this up, please allow at least 24 hours just before you go and check if they're all synced over. Won't necessarily, doesn't have to take 24 hours, but just kind of as a catch-all when you first initially do this, just for it to get everything situated before you start worrying that, I get a lot of users that sync it and after 30 minutes say, oh, well, they didn't come over, it must not work for me. So give it 24 hours the first time you sync. Then after that initial sync, it'll usually update your CRM every hour. So for example, if I have a contact that I've added to Google that's not in kvCORE, and I will mention, this is based on email address. I did mention with the bulk import tool, kvCORE can only detect duplicate contacts if they have the same email address. Works the same way with this function as well. So if your contacts are missing email addresses, there is the potential, if you're worried about duplicates and those duplicate contacts in Google and kvCORE don't have an email address, this process could import those duplicates. So whenever possible, even if you just have to put in, say, a filler email address for now, that's going to help prevent duplicate contacts from being brought in. But again, every hour or so, if it sees a unique contact in your Google that's not in kvCORE, it's going to load that in. Now you have an option whether or not you want to be in charge of how kvCORE contacts load into your Google contacts. So if you want, you can click this always button, and it's just going to be a continuous two-way sync. So if you're also in the habit of occasionally adding a new contact to kvCORE and also want that information in Google, which isn't a bad practice, you can go ahead and click this always button, and it's going to load that way as well. If you'd rather have more control over what kvCORE contacts show up under your Google contacts, you can click this manual option, and then you can manually select in a contacts timeline if you want them to be synced to Google. And I'll go ahead and I'll leave this turned on. I'll try to give you guys a little demo of what that looks like. Now, one thing to note about this process here, you can see I can choose how to import those contacts in. I can choose what status I want them to have. And there's a drop-down menu here. These are all the statuses that kvCORE has. Again, I mentioned statuses refer to where they are in that home buying or home selling journey. So Sphere is kind of a catch-all for, say, anyone who may or may not be interested in real estate. So that could be your friends, your family, your coworkers, vendors that you use. Your prospects are those that, you're working to convert to a real estate lead. Their timeline might be a little bit farther off. Your new leads are the ones that, maybe came in through a website or through, say, a Facebook ad, and you're trying to figure out how seriously they're looking. And then your active leads are those that are actively, say, returning to your site, actively communicating with you. I think most people know who is their current client, who's got a contract pending, a transaction pending, who they've closed a deal with. And archived, if you're unfamiliar, that is an alternative to deleting a lead. It just kind of, it keeps them unsubscribed from any automated communication, but it holds on to that contact information. So I can choose one of these, and every contact that comes over from Google will enter into kvCORE as a Sphere contact. Now let's also talk about what information comes over. So it's going to bring over their name, their email address, their, probably their home address, whatever you have listed in Google. Does not bring over tags. So if you're familiar with hashtags in kvCORE, which are your own personal labels, you'll notice I don't have an option to, add a hashtag to these leads during this process. I'd have to go back and update those contacts. And same idea with deal type as well. You'll notice there's no option to mark if they're a buyer or a seller or a renter. So again, that'd be something I would update after that contact was added to kvCORE. So just something to note here as well. I also have some users that might, after syncing, say want to delete certain contacts. If you delete a contact in, maybe you have this synced and you delete a contact in Google, next time this process syncs, because it syncs every hour, it's also going to remove that contact from kvCORE. But if you remove a contact from kvCORE, you delete that contact, that doesn't necessarily remove it from Google. So just something to be aware of there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and save my settings. and show off that calendar. And also, if I can, show you how to manually transfer a lead to Google. I'm going to refresh my screen here just to make sure everything's working properly. I thought, I may have missed it. I thought I saw a hand. If you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat or Q&A. If anything I said, doesn't make sense, or even if you have a question not related to today's topic, feel free to share that out. All right, so let's pretend here that testing McTesterson needs to go into my Google. So I'm going to click into their contact record, and a couple things that I'm going to note here. After I had this synced and it was up for a while, again, you want to give at least probably 24 hours after that synced. If I had set testing McTesterson an email through Gmail, and then I went to connect my Gmail to kvCORE, and I had that email option toggled on, it would show up here in this timeline. Keep in mind, this is just try to show the newest messages at the top. So if I sent that email a while ago, it should, I believe, show up in the correct kind of order. So if I sent it, earlier, it would show up earlier in his timeline. If I sent it to him recently, it'd probably show up towards the top. Now, on the right-hand side, we've got this More Actions drop-down for this contact. And if I scroll on down here, you'll see there's now an option to sync with Google Contacts. If I go to click that, it's going to ask me if I'm sure if I want to sync this contact to Google. And if I hit yes, that's going to load on over to my Google Contacts. So just a little visual. Again, if you choose that manual option, if you want to be in control of what contacts from kvCORE load into Google, that's what this looks like. So it is a manual process if you do it that way. Otherwise, if you choose always, then they're always going to sync on over. All right. And I also want to show you guys where that calendar shows up. So let's head back to the dashboard within kvCORE. Let that load on up here. And a couple things to point out for my new users in kvCORE. Hopefully you were told at this stage, or if you're brand new, I don't expect you to know this, but hopefully you were told at some stage in your journey that the dashboard is a good place to regularly check in. You want to check on new lead activity here. You want to make sure you're staying on top of any calls and tasks that are assigned to you. And then right next to your calls and tasks is your calendar. Now, a calendar will only populate here, again, if you connected over a Google or Outlook calendar. So might be showing a little too much here. I'm showing off my Google Calendar here. A very busy schedule, as we can see. And one of the cool things about this feature is when I have my calendar connected here, it can also sync over, say, tasks and calls that are assigned to me through kvCORE. Ooh, voice sounds terrible. Apologies. I think it's calling for some water. All right, so it also syncs over, tasks or calls. So for example, here's my tasks. Looks like I've got 2 due today. One was due at 8:30 a.m. One is due at 2:18. And if I keep these in here, if I keep my calendar connected, I can expect once that sync is all set up, which can take a little bit of time additionally, but usually every hour or so, I would see those tasks and calls sync over as well. So if I'm, say, not in kvCORE, maybe I'm going to Google to check my calendar, don't be surprised if you see your kvCORE tasks show up on your Google Calendar. So kind of a cool way to help yourself stay accountable if you're always checking your Google Calendar, but maybe, don't have that much time to log into kvCORE all the time, or maybe it's just not something you have open on your phone while you're on the go. That's another handy resource to help make sure you're staying on top of any calls or tasks that are assigned to you. So definitely a cool feature having that Google Calendar attached. Now, if I ever want to disconnect this, or maybe I want to add a different email address here, if I click on this little envelope symbol, I can just go back to Google settings and I can disconnect this at any time. So I'm going to make sure to disconnect mine. But yes, that's really how that email sync process works. A couple other little pro tips I want to give to you guys. So a little pro tip, we mentioned that, if you're worried about duplicate contacts being synced over, it's always, always, always a good idea to make sure your contacts have an email address. And even if you need to add, say, a filler email address in the meantime, that's going to help, prevent duplicates. And, might sound kind of silly, but what I'm talking about with, say, a filler email address, for some of you out there, if you've ever, say, imported contacts into kvCORE and your contacts were missing an email address and they received one that said something like, we'll just use my name as an example, Marielle Ortiz. Wow, can't even spell my name correctly. Apologies, folks. All right, but something like first name, last name at kvleads.com. That's a filler email address, clearly not a real email address. And if it's showing up for your contacts where it's their first name, last name at kvleads.com, I'm sure you're aware as well, that's not their real address. But that could be just used as a placeholder in the meantime. And you can always go back to your contacts and, just update them at any time if you need to. So there's a little pencil icon to the right. I can go and I can change that email address if that's not correct. And again, this test lead here purposely has a bad email address, just doing some testing of my own. All right, let's see. Someone said that they tried to connect their calendar, but received a 403 message. We're sorry but you do not have access to this page. So for Renata, did you try to connect this? First of all, are you connecting a Google or an Outlook? And second of all, is that your personal email address, or is this something possibly provided by your company? It's your personal one? What I might also recommend, let me pull up the spot in our support article here. There is a little pro tip. So sometimes there can be sync issues if the email is not in the from section within your agent profile. So little pro tip here. I'll explain what this means. In your kvCORE profile, which you'll find in the upper right-hand corner where your name is located, and clicking on that menu, I'm going to go to my profile here. Now, I do want to mention, as I'm mentioning this feature, I know some brokerages out there, depending on your brokerage, some of this information auto-fills from, whatever your intranet source is for very specific brokerages, not for most. Most you can just come here and edit your profile on the spot. But for some of you out there, you might see some grayed out fields and things like that. But if I were to edit my profile, I'll scroll down here, you'll notice there is a from email address option. This can be very handy if you want to, say, send emails through kvCORE and have those emails look like they're being sent from, a different email address, like my Gmail, for example. So I could type in my from email address, type it in there. And that can sometimes help with that sync process. I know some people see errors, but when they go to update their profile with a from email address that is the same as the email address they're syncing, that can sometimes help with those issues. So that might be the first thing I would try. If you can edit that, try that first. If this continues to be a problem, if you can take a screenshot of it, I would report that to our chat support team. But that's a little pro tip. I hope that helps for you. Hopefully that makes the difference there. And then let's see. When you disconnect Google, does it remove the contact from kvCORE? It should leave them in there. However, if I were to disconnect Google and then go and delete that contact, it won't bring it back in. So it should leave them in there after you disconnect it. But again, if you're just wanting to, bring over contacts one time, I'm still a big fan of, bulk importing your contacts over. I think this email connection option is really probably most convenient if you're consistently adding new contacts and you just want that always there. You could just do it as a one-time thing if you really wanted to. But again, there's pros and cons to each. I always like to emphasize again, since you can only choose a status with those contacts you're bringing over. If you've got, say, thousands of contacts in your Google and you'd use this method to sync them all over, they're going to show up with whatever status you assign them. The deal type will say buyer by default, and they'll have no hashtags. So that means for each of them, if they're not a buyer, you'll want to go in and you'll change their deal type, and you'll probably want to assign some hashtags or to some labels to them. So I feel like, for some people that might not be the most convenient method. But again, if you're just, occasionally adding one or two with that sync process, that's not a lot of work to go and update one or two contacts. But when you're doing it for a mass import, I know some users might find that a little overwhelming to go back and update all those contacts so they're all labeled correctly. I hope that makes sense. If you need some clarification on what I mean by that, please let me know. All right. And then someone mentioned as well, anonymous attendee, if you don't want to upload all your email contacts from Google, how do you upload your client sphere from an Excel or Google Sheet type document? Great question. Okay, yeah. So we did talk about bulk importing last week a little bit, but I wasn't very email specific. So let's see what I can answer with that. I will, full transparency, I've done videos in the past, walking you through step-by-step of importing contacts. And then unfortunately, when we try to upload that to YouTube, YouTube has some rules about, what contact information you can show. And as I'm teaching these live, it's hard for me to, gray out contact information and things like that. So YouTube didn't like it very much when I, had a video of me with contact information up on my screen. So, but to give you kind of a more generic example here, and anonymous attendee, if I think you said Google contacts is what you said. Let me double check. I've already forgot. Yes, you said Google. So Google's pretty easy, actually. You can, type in here how to export contacts from Google. I think we also have a support article as well. If I am correct, do I have it linked here? Sync your contacts, backup contacts. Let me go ahead and grab that article for you guys real quick here. So exporting, I think it's called exporting from known sources. How to export contacts from common sources. This is not terribly thorough. I'm sure this will be updated in the future, but we have included links to some support articles for exporting contacts from outside sources. So I'll pop this link in the chat. I'll probably leave it up here. I'll update my guide to include this link. But there are instructions for exporting from Google. It's really kind of straightforward. I'm already, for example, logged into my Google account. Might be a little hard to see here. Let's make it a little larger here. I'm actually, let's see, let me change it to a different email account here. I've got a little demo one because I don't want to share anyone's contact information here. And what I would do if I wanted to export those contacts, I can click on Google Apps. I could also type in here Google Contacts. It'd take me there too. But if I click on my Google Apps, I can scroll on down to Contacts. Now, this fake account that I have has some very silly, not real contacts. Let me emphasize, I don't actually know Bugs Bunny or Captain America's email address here. This is just for demos. And all I really do if I want to export those out, there is typically an export option on the right-hand side. Looks like they've moved it actually. Let's see. There we go. Export. So that arrow up option on the upper right-hand corner, I'll make my screen a little bit bigger here. It used to be over in this left-hand column. Looks like Google's just updated this. So it's right here. It says export. When I click that button, it's going to ask me which contacts I want to export. If you don't want to bring all of yours into kvCORE, you can manually select contacts first and just choose the ones you've selected. You could also export all your contacts and delete some from the file before you send it to kvCORE. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to export everybody real quick here. Google CSV is perfect. Leave it exactly as is. I'm going to click the export button. All right, so it's downloaded that. We can see that in my downloads now. And honestly, I would definitely recommend checking out the file that you've downloaded. So let's see if I can open this up in Google Sheets here. All right, it's thinking about it. It's loading a little slowly. I'm going to go ahead and type in Google Sheets. For those of you without Excel on your computer, Google Sheets is a great option, totally free to use. I find it very user-friendly. And if you need a little tutorial, YouTube has tons of videos. Not personally the Inside Real Estate YouTube, but YouTube in general has tons of videos on how to use Google Sheets. So I can go and I can go to File, open up that spreadsheet that I just downloaded here real quick. So let's go ahead and browse my files. I got it. Apologies, folks. It's going to load a little slow here. I've got a lot of things open. Doesn't want me to click that. There we go. And it's thinking about it. I apologize. I'm going to move my downloads file to the other side here as things load up. And keep in mind, we've got about, I want to say, 20 or so minutes left in this session. I should cut it a little bit short. Apologies, I do have a webinar after this one here. So if you have other questions about kvCORE, now's your chance to pop them in the chat or Q&A while I'm doing this. I'm always happy to switch over, once we're done talking about this feature here. All right, so here's what it looks like when I export contacts from Google. So definitely looks different. If you've ever seen kvCORE's version of the import template, the fields are going to look a little different. The specifically, there we go, we got it. Specifically, the header names in some of these fields is going to look a little different than what you'd see in a kvCORE import template. And yes, we've got a support article you can reference as well if you need to import your own contacts. I'll pop that in the chat as well. Just for anyone who's going through this process. And again, the webinar that I taught last Tuesday is a great resource for this. You can also book a one-on-one Zoom screen share with our import team if you need to. If you need a little help with that, that's going to be lead config. And I'll have to look it up for you guys because unfortunately it's escaped my memory. But anyways, when you get that export for getting your contacts from Gmail, you could, if you wanted to, take the time to format this file. So in which case I'd have you look at our kvCORE import template, and you're probably going to want to match, what the headers say. So you'd probably want to do a little work here, maybe delete some empty columns, change what the headers say, check the formatting here. So definitely a little bit more work is involved. You also want to add in columns for how you want to label the contacts. Like I was saying previously with status and hashtags and deal type. If that sounds like a lot of work to do all of this formatting, again, we have a team that can help you with it. So I'm just going to quickly show that, and then we'll answer. Joan asked a great question about importing spouses, so I want to make sure I address that too. So lead engine in your kvCORE platform. If I head to the upper right-hand corner, it says bulk lead import manager settings. And I'm going to go ahead and click there. And again, I said you can do the import yourself. We've got videos. Here's a quick link to our support guide. The import template is in there. You can also find the import template up here. You can also chat in with support, and they'd probably be able to provide you with the import template. So lots of ways for you to grab it. But we also have a team that can help you with this process. And to do so, you just fill out a short submission form. You attach your file there. They're going to ask you in that submission form how you like your contacts labeled in terms of status and hashtag and deal type. But if you do need some one-on-one help with this, you can book a time with them. So let me go and click on that link, and I'll pop this into the chat. This is the link I was scrambling my brain for previously. Want to make sure I gave you guys the correct one here. And this allows you to book a one-on-one Zoom screen share with an import specialist. Now, I do want to mention this is totally free. It is only to talk about importing contacts. Please do not try to take advantage of our team. They cannot answer support questions. They're just here to help with importing contacts. So if you're having a problem with your website, this is not the correct resource for that. Additionally, it's not a phone call, so don't expect your phone to ring. You will, if you book a time with them, you will get emailed a Zoom link. Oh, and wow, they even have availability today. They do sometimes get a little backed up, so I'm kind of surprised to see that. But yeah, absolutely. You could book a time with them. And then again, try to make sure it's a time where you can be present at your computer. And hopefully, if you can, have that file already downloaded to your computer. You don't have to go through all the edit process, but have it downloaded so you can show your file to them, and they can kind of give you their advice on what you need to change, or they can also talk you through how to submit it on over to them so they can get those imported. So I hope that helps to answer your question in the chat about someone who wanted another method for bringing in email contacts. Again, you can submit it on over to our team as well. All right, but let's talk about thoughts on best practices for inputting spouses. All right, let's reference my spreadsheet here because I feel like this is a helpful guide. Now, I don't have any spouses in this spreadsheet. Let's pretend here, let's do spouse first name, and let's add in a column for spouse last name. Let's also add in spouse phone, and I'll explain why I'm doing this in a second, and spouse email. You can also enter in spouse birthday as well, but I won't make you guys sit here while I type that all out. So these are all fields that can be imported into kvCORE, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like in the CRM. Let's jump into the Smart CRM here. Let's click on our friend Testing McTesterton, and let's click on his profile details. So I do want to mention, if you're entering in spouse information into those fields, it's not going to show up in their main contact information. So Testing McTesterton, this is his name, his first and last name, whatever I entered into that spreadsheet. This phone number would be his cell phone one. So whatever his main cell phone number is, this would be his main email address. And if I am sending Testing McTesterton an email or a cell phone, or not sending him a cell phone, sending him a text message or say a call, this is the information that it would use. Now, spouse information can be added in a couple ways. I can go to profile details, and if I just want to have this information on hand, maybe the spouse isn't really very active in, say, the home buying or home selling process, maybe testing here, McTesterton here is the one who's kind of in charge of things, and I just want to like hold on to that spouse information, I could enter it here, or again, I can import the contact with this data and just have it autofill in here for me. So here's those fields: first name, last name, email, cell phone, birthday. I can also give them a title: Mr., Mrs., Dr., whatever it is. So this just holds on to that data. It's not sending the spouse any information. So if I send, again, him an email, it's not going to contact that spouse email. There's also fields additionally for, a second email address as well. There we go, second email address. And again, it's not going to email those other ones. This is just a placeholder, just hold on to that information for you. Now, with spouses, if both parties are pretty active in this process and maybe you want to make sure you're contacting both parties separately, I would add both spouses in as separate contacts. And of course, feel free to also include, for each one, that spouse information. It's also going to help you, if you ever can't remember, oh, what was that? And maybe I'm in testing's contact profile here, and I just want to quickly remember what was his wife's email address or what was his wife's phone. I can search it here. So it definitely helps to have the information in both places. But again, if I'm contacting both spouses, I would have, testing McTesterton here, and, we'll pretend his wife is Mrs. McTesterton. I really should have come up with one that's less of a tongue twister. And then what I would do to help kind of tie them together or make it easier to be able to remind myself later on if I'm looking at his information that his spouse is in here separately, is I might give them the same hashtag. So I might give both parties, both him and his spouse, the hashtag, Mick Testerson is usually a good one. If they both have the same last name, that's a good one. So that way, if I'm, say, searching my CRM for hashtag Mick Testerson, it would pull up both him and his wife if I had them there as separate contacts. Additionally, you can do another hashtag, maybe spouses. If you want to pull up everybody's with spouses in here, that's not a bad hashtag as well. But it's nice to tie the two together with a common hashtag. Now, additionally, I do have some users that, again, maybe it's just one spouse gets most of the contact information, or one spouse wants all the search alerts, all the market reports, and both spouses don't need to be included. You can, if you wanted to, when entering a contact, do, Mr. and Mrs. Mick Testerson. And then whichever spouse is going to be the one who's in charge of receiving those search alerts and market reports and checking that information, you can just enter that email address here and that cell phone number here. And there are also options as well. If you add in both spouses and maybe they just want to receive the exact same search alert, another little pro tip as well. When I'm putting someone on a search alert, which let's go click add here real quick. I can actually choose to have another individual CC'd on that search alert. So kind of a cool feature as well if you want both parties to receive those pieces of automation. So hopefully that helped, Joan. I feel like, I apologize if that was a little all over the place. But yes, a couple different ways that you could bring in spouses. I definitely think, again, if you want to contact them separately, add them as separate contacts, but give them a similar hashtag. If you're okay with just having, one spouse receive all the contact information, I do still think it's a good idea to, add in those fields for their first and last name, their phone and their email. While they can't be contacted using those, it is handy to have that information on hand if you need to go back and reference it. So I always think it's worthwhile to add in as much information as you got for your contacts. So you're really setting yourself up for success there. All right, folks. I am going to have to wrap it up here shortly. I apologize. I've got another training right after this one. But let's see, any last minute questions in the chat or Q&A, whether it's about importing contacts or whether it's about something else in kvCORE. Feel free to share them with me. All right. Little reminder of the goodies on this agenda. And I have noticed a couple people have joined us since we started, so I'll reshare this agenda out in the chats. I'm going to go back and I will also update this agenda. I'll add under the, say, additional resources. I'll go and I'll add that sheet I mentioned about importing and exporting your contacts. And I'll also add in that support article I referenced for rules or steps to export contacts from Yahoo and Google and Outlook for anyone who needs that as well. Oh, and how to avoid being marked as spam. Glenda brought up another great one. We do have a support article on that as well. Are you concerned with emails being marked as spam specifically? I'm assuming. I will also include a support article on email deliverability as well. There's definitely some tips in here that can help with that. Might seem kind of silly, but adding things like a physical address to your email signature can help it be help prevent it from being, marked as spam. I'd also look at some of the trigger words that you use. And if you're not regularly using your inbox, sometimes sources like Google and Outlook might think that this is, if it's not something that you're regularly using, if you're not sending out a lot of emails, might think, in some cases, some of these spam users, might create a whole new email address to start sending out emails, and they have no kind of past history with that service. So more likely to be detected as spam. So different tips in here. I'll make sure to share that out. Oh, add a physical address to your email signature. So your office location is a good one if you can add that to your email signature. I know not everyone wants to do that, not required, but that can help. And then, what's the next training? Is it open to participate? Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about these success meetups, again, we hold these every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So come back tomorrow. Tomorrow will be with my fellow trainer, Christina, and she is going to be talking about adding merge tags to your mass messaging let's see, let me double check that through our training calendar. If you go to the Facebook group, you'll usually always see a post towards the beginning of the week on what the upcoming topics will be. So if you're looking ever at the Facebook group, which of course you don't have to, but if you go check our recent media, if you ever see like a green photo image here with some text on top, here we go. This was this week's topics, and this is the one that's tomorrow. So merge tags to personalize your mass communications is the topic for tomorrow if you want to join us then. All right. Oh yeah, and I can put that article about email deliverability in the chat as well. All right, folks, I apologize. I do have to wrap it up here. Hopefully you guys grab my webinar agenda. I'll probably update this later with today's recording link in case you want it. Otherwise, you can always find it on YouTube within probably about 48 hours. All right, thanks. Thank you so much for all your awesome questions. I appreciate the participation and thanks for joining. I hope this is helpful and I wish you lots of luck with your kvCORE platforms. Take care.